She didn't look dangerous. That was the first mistake people made. Just a woman in oil-stained coveralls, sleeves rolled to the elbow, leaning into the belly of an A-10 Thunderbolt. The hangar smelled of jet fuel and old metal, and the morning light slanted through the high windows like thin blades. She tightened the last bolt, wiped her hands on a rag, and didn't say a word. No one ever looked twice at her. Until the colonel did. It was nothing dramatic. No alarm, no gasp, just a flicker. But sometimes the smallest moments are the ones that detonate everything afterward. Her sleeve had fallen back as she worked. The ink was exposed just long enough for him to see it. A black insignia, wings folded around a blade coiled with a silver thread, clean, precise, impossible to mistake. No one in that hangar should have recognized it. No one outside the operation should have known it existed. Yet the colonel froze. His breath caught subtle, controlled, but caught. His eyes narrowed. Because he did know it. It was the mark of a unit officially erased 7 years ago. Reported KIA, files sealed, no graves, no acknowledgement, a lost team that the military swore had never existed. Raven Squadron. Her team. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't hide the tattoo. Just lowered her sleeve and clicked her wrench into place. The colonel approached slowly. He moved like a man walking through memory. "Where did you get that mark?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud, that made it worse. Quiet voices always do. She kept her eyes on the cannon housing. "Earned it," she said. And that was all. The silence that followed felt like something breathing in the walls. The next morning she was gone. Not missing, no alarm was raised. Not AWOL, her bunk looked like she had simply completed her shift and would return. Her tools remained perfectly arranged. Her uniform hung in her locker with precise military fold lines. But she was gone. And the colonel knew why. Because he had gone to her file that night, and something in it had made him pale. Something that should not have been possible. Something that said, "This woman died 7 years ago." Yet she had been working under his command for almost 2. So now the base moved differently. The air felt charged, eyes tracked shadows, orders were spoken quietly, and somewhere in the desert morning an investigation had begun long before anyone said the word investigation. The military has many weapons. Silence is one of them. The colonel stood by the A-10 at dawn, the sky still dark. The ground sparkled faintly with frost. His hands rested against the cold metal of the aircraft, as though grounding himself. He didn't hear the footsteps until the man was already beside him. General Rowan. Immaculate. Composed. Watching the world like it was a chessboard. "The aircraft is ready," the colonel said, keeping his voice steady. Rowan didn't look at him. Not yet. Instead, he ran his fingertips lightly along the cannon casing, almost with admiration. "She fixed the failure," Rowan said. 3 breakdowns in the last month, and she handled it." The colonel said nothing. Rowan finally turned. "Curious skill set, don't you think, for someone with her record?" The colonel met his eyes. "The Air Force trains its personnel thoroughly." A faint smile curved the general's mouth. "Some training," he said softly, "doesn't appear in records." The colonel didn't respond. He didn't need to. Rowan was probing, looking for cracks. The general walked around to face the cockpit. "Enjoy your test flight, Colonel," he said, stepping back. But as the colonel climbed in, the crew chief handed him his helmet, and inside was a folded piece of paper. No one saw. The colonel's face didn't change. Once the canopy was sealed, he unfolded it with one hand. "Check cannon feed synchronization." L. His pulse tightened. The engines roared, drowning everything. No one could see the thought moving in his mind, the way realization formed sharp edges. Someone had sabotaged the plane. Not to fail quietly, not to disable. To kill him. He lifted off into the dawn sky. She watched from the ridge outside the base, far enough to avoid cameras, close enough to track activity. The desert was endless around her, empty except for the whisper of wind and heat shimmer on the horizon. Her face was still, controlled. But her hands were not empty. On her lap lay a small, battered notebook, black cover, edges frayed, pages full of numbers, coordinates, names, a map of the past 6 years, handwritten because handwritten couldn't be hacked. No one knew she had walked out of the Sevastopol facility. No one knew she had survived her team's final mission. And no one knew that the explosion that killed them was not enemy fire. It was American. Ordered, signed, executed. She had watched her team die through thermal scopes, their heat signatures fading one by one in fire. She had expected to die too. She didn't. Survival was not grace, not luck, not mercy. It was a sentence. She kept her eyes on the runway as the A-10 ascended, the cannon firing in controlled bursts as the colonel tested the system, with the timing she had told him. He had listened. That mattered. Trust didn't exist in her world anymore, but usefulness did. She didn't need him to understand her. She needed him alive. Because this wasn't about revenge. Revenge was small. This was about truth. Truth buried under classified reports. Truth sealed in burned buildings. Truth hidden behind medals and promotions. She didn't need to be remembered. She needed them to be exposed. Behind her, the desert wind shifted. She didn't turn, just listened. Footsteps controlled, not rushing, someone trained. She closed the notebook. "I wonder when you'd come," she said. The colonel stepped beside her. He didn't aim a weapon, didn't posture, that was something. "You were Raven 6, he said. She didn't answer him. The truth didn't need confirmation. It lived in the silence between them. "They tried to kill me today," he said. She nodded once. "They'll try again." Another nod. "You knew," he said. This time she did speak. "That's why I stayed." The desert air held still, as if leaning closer. "What do you want?" he asked. Her eyes finally lifted from the horizon. "Justice," she said. "Not vengeance. Not redemption. Justice." The colonel exhaled slowly. "You'll have to prove everything." "I already have," she said. She handed him the notebook. He opened to the first page and his face changed, not in shock but in recognition. The same names, the same facility, the same dates he had once signed off on, believing the mission he authorized was righteous. "You didn't disappear," he murmured. "You've been tracing them." For 6 years. The weight of that time settled in the dirt at their feet. He closed the notebook and handed it back. Not rejection, acknowledgement. "They'll hunt you," he said. "They already are. And me." She didn't deny it. The colonel looked out across the runway at the base where he had served, commanded, believed in. Something broke quietly in his expression. Not loyalty. Not honor. Just illusion. "What comes next?" he asked. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. "Now," she said, rising to her feet, "we make them afraid." The desert wind carried the words like dust. Quiet. Certain. Unstoppable. Sometimes, the most dangerous person on a base isn't the one carrying a weapon. It's the one who has nothing left to lose and everything left to expose. He didn't ask how she survived, not yet. Some questions carry landmines beneath them. They walked back toward the base in silence, their boots breaking thin crusts of sand. The sky was shifting from dawn's pale violet to the harsher blue of day. Heat would come soon. Heat that burned away softness, hesitation, memory. She didn't glance at him as they walked. He didn't ask where she had been hiding. They didn't look like allies, but they were walking in the same direction, toward the same enemy. The colonel had seen battlefields, corruption, losses that never made the news. He had buried soldiers whose names never landed on plaques. But this was different. He had signed orders that had led to death. He had believed the reason. He had trusted the chain of command. He just never expected the chain to become a noose. They stopped just beyond the perimeter fence. The base hummed with routine drills, engine checks, radio chatter. But beneath the noise, something else lingered. A tightening. A watching. The colonel kept his voice low. They'll be searching for you. Her eyes tracked the movement of two MPs near the flight line. Their posture wasn't casual. They weren't patrolling, they were looking. For me, she whispered, and now for you. He exhaled slowly. I didn't say I was with you. No, she said, but you didn't try to stop me. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She studied his face, not to read him but to confirm something. Trust in her world wasn't given. Trust was calculated. You don't have to choose, she said. Not yet, just don't speak my name, don't confirm you saw me, not to Rowan, not to anyone. And when they ask, he asked. They'll ask gently first, she said. That's how they always start. His jaw tightened. He'd done those interrogations, he knew. A pause stretched between them, long and quiet, filled with a shared understanding of consequences. Then he stepped forward, not close enough to touch her, but close enough to look her directly in the eyes. Tell me something, he said. Why now? Why reveal yourself now? Her breath shivered just once. Pain buried under control. Because, she said, eyes lifting toward the runway, they're getting ready to do it again. The words fell heavy, quiet, terrifying in their simplicity. The colonel didn't ask who they were. He already knew. He turned toward the gate. Walk separately, she whispered. Different timing, no pattern, no link. He nodded, but before he stepped away, he hesitated. What was your team's last transmission? He asked. The question was soft, but it struck. Her throat tightens. She closes her eyes once. One breath. Target secured, requesting extraction. Her voice cracked so faintly, most people would never hear it. He heard it. And the reply, he asked, though he already feared the answer. There had been no reply. Only silence. And then fire. I listened to them burn, she said, barely audible. They were calling my name. She inhaled and the air trembled in her lungs, but she didn't let it break her. They trusted me to lead them, and I led them into a death written before we touched ground. Her eyes opened. Wounded, controlled. Pain sharpened into purpose. The colonel swallowed hard. He turned away, not to leave, but to hide the crack forming beneath his own composure. There are deaths that stain, but there are betrayals that never stop bleeding. He walked toward the base. She remained still until he was gone. Then she disappeared back into the desert wind. The colonel entered the briefing room 15 minutes late. Rowan was already there. A spread of officers sat around the table, files open, coffee cups steaming, faces composed. The air felt rehearsed, too calm, like everyone had been warned to play a part. Colonel, Rowan said with a cool smile, we were waiting for you. The colonel sat slowly, adjusting his uniform with deliberate calm. My apologies, sir. I was reviewing maintenance logs from last night. A lie, but one dressed in enough truth to be unremarkable. Rowan's eyes held his. Searching. Measuring. Any findings? Rowan asked. The colonel allowed a slow breath before answering. Nothing conclusive, he said, but something was altered in the feed synchronization before pre-flight. Subtle, clean, intentional. A ripple went through the room. Not shock, too practiced for that, but attention. Rowan leaned back slightly. And you're certain the alteration was not the result of Sergeant Thorne's work? The colonel didn't blink. I don't make assumptions, he said simply. Rowan's jaw shifted, a micro-expression gone in a heartbeat, but the colonel saw it. Pressure. He had struck the right nerve. She is missing, I hear, Rowan said. The table stilled. The colonel didn't look away. Yes, sir, he said. She did not report. And your interpretation? Rowan asked lightly, almost conversational. The colonel held Rowan's gaze like holding the eye contact of a dangerous animal. That depends, the colonel said quietly. Was she running? A silence, then soft and sharp. Or was she hunted? A few officers shifted. Someone cleared their throat. The question hung in the air like smoke. Rowan's expression didn't break. Sergeant Thorne is a mechanic, Rowan said. Nothing more. People disappear from time to time, stress, personal issues, disciplinary hesitation. Fragile minds break easily. The colonel's voice was ice. She didn't break. Something flickered in Rowan's eyes. Not fear. Recognition. He changed tactics. Colonel, Rowan said, steepling his fingers, I'd like a private conversation. The officers filed out, silent, orderly, every step trained. The door closed. Two men remained. One trying to uncover the truth. One trying to bury it. Rowan spoke first. You saw something you shouldn't have. The colonel didn't respond. Rowan continued. And you are a loyal man. A man who understands that the bigger picture sometimes requires difficult choices. A difficult choice, the colonel said softly, like letting a team burn alive. Rowan exhaled slowly. So she told you. Not denial. Not surprise. Just confirmation. A cold acknowledgement of a crime already accepted. The colonel's hand tightened imperceptibly around the edge of the table. She survived, Rowan said, the faintest irritation behind the words. She wasn't meant to. Now she imagines herself a martyr, a crusader, and crusaders are dangerous, the colonel finished for him. Rowan nodded. Help us locate her, Rowan said, voice smooth as clean metal. We can contain this, quietly. No careers ruined, no damage to national security, no unnecessary casualties. The colonel's voice was steady. And her team? Rowan's eyes sharpened. Tragic, but irrelevant to this moment. The colonel's pulse hammered. Not with fear. With clarity. Rowan thought he was making an offer. But what he had done was reveal the entire battlefield. The colonel stood. I'll consider your request, General. Rowan's smile returned. I knew you were reasonable. The colonel walked out. The door slid shut behind him. He didn't breathe until he reached the hallway. Not because he was afraid, but because the weight of what he now knew was real, undeniable, irreversible. This wasn't corruption. This was betrayal of the deepest military vow. Rowan hadn't covered up the deaths of her team. He had ordered them. And now Rowan wanted her erased again. The colonel stepped into the sunlight. He exhaled. He began to plan. Across the base, in a storage hangar no one paid attention to, she sat on the floor with her back against the wall, legs drawn up, arms wrapped around herself, not in fear but to keep from shaking. Not shaking from adrenaline. From memory. The last voice she had heard over the radio belonged to the youngest in her squad. Raven 6, where are you? We. Static. Then fire. Then silence so absolute it had shape. She bit down hard on the inside of her cheek, grounding herself. Pain was real. Pain kept you here. Pain kept you moving. She didn't wipe the tear that slipped down her cheek. Tears meant nothing. They just proved she had not turned to stone. Footsteps approached. The colonel stepped inside. He closed the door behind him. He didn't speak. She didn't look up. But something eased. Just slightly. He sat beside her. Not touching. Not facing her. Just there. Quiet. Still. Two soldiers. Two ghosts. Two people who had watched trust turn into graves. Finally he spoke. They're not hiding it anymore. She nodded. They don't need to, she whispered. They think they've already won. Her voice trembled, but only once. He let the silence settle again. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were wet but steady. What now? He asked. Her answer was not vengeful. Not enraged. Not desperate. Just tired. So deeply tired. Now, she said softly, we make them regret believing we were easy to erase. And the way she said it. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The first move came faster than either of them expected. It happened the way quiet tragedies do. Not with alarms, not with shouting, but with a gentle summons and the wrong person walking through the wrong door. She didn't see it. The colonel didn't see it. They were preparing for something bigger, something distant, something strategic. But Rowan did not look outward. Rowan attacked the heart. The colonel returned to his quarters that night in silence. The hallway lights cast a faint yellow glow, humming softly like something alive. His uniform felt heavier than usual, like it carried something invisible, a weight of knowledge that had no shape but pressed down all the same. He keyed open his door and stopped. There was someone sitting on the edge of his bed. Not a soldier. His daughter. Her boots were still dusty from the drive. Her hair was tied back in the hurried way she did when traveling. A backpack rested at her feet. She looked up when she heard him, her eyes full of warmth and exhaustion. Hey, Dad. For a second, one brief second, relief washed through him. He hadn't seen her in 3 months. She'd been finishing medical training in San Diego. She shouldn't have been here. There was no reason for her to be here. Unless someone brought her. Unless someone wanted her here. His chest tightened, so subtly it didn't show on his face. What are you doing here? He asked, voice steady. She smiled, soft, unaware. General Rowan called, she said. Said you were under a lot of stress. Said you might need, she paused, searching the right word. Someone who grounds you. The colonel didn't move. Not a blink. Not a breath. Not a tremor. Inside, something cold unfurled. Did he? The colonel said quietly. She nodded. He said the base is taking on sensitive operations again. I thought maybe you were heading into deployment. Deployment. That was the word Rowan always used when he meant risk. Or pressure. Or leverage. The colonel set his cap down with controlled precision. Did you tell anyone you were coming? He asked. No, he said it was better to keep it quiet. Of course he did. The colonel sat in the chair across from her, not beside her, not close. Distance was protection now. She didn't notice. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. You look tired, she said softly. He did not apologize. He did not explain. He simply studied her face, the one pure piece of his life that had not been corrupted by orders, missions, politics, war. And now Rowan had touched it. Have you spoken to anyone else since you arrived? He asked. She shook her head. No, they brought me directly here. They? So Rowan had sent an escort. Meaning Rowan wanted the colonel to know exactly who brought her. Meaning Rowan was sending a message with no hidden edges. You made your decision. So I made mine. His daughter, unaware of the tension curdling the air, looked around the room. I thought we could get dinner, something normal, she smiled. I miss normal. The Colonel's throat tightened. Just for a moment. She wasn't built for this world.